died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, Truly, you are the Son of God.
Thank you. May the Lord bless to our heart the reading of his word. Amen. About 25 years ago or so, I can't quite remember, but it was around 25 years or so. If anyone knows me, I love aeroplanes. I love aeroplanes, and especially Air Force, any jet. As fast as it goes, the better I like it. And I had an opportunity, my sister spoiled me, to go on a 1952 Soviet Yak. And I had the opportunity to be on that very fast plane. And before we went on and before we took off, the pilot, he was not a youngster, he was probably as old as the 1952 Yak, sort of turned to me and he says, I've got a few forms for you to fill. And I said, oh, okay, I'm just going on a joyride. He goes, yeah, but you need some consent forms and so and so. So I read through the forms, and it says if the aeroplane crashes, I don't hold the pilot responsible. If something goes wrong with this old aeroplane, I don't hold the mechanics responsible. And basically, I gave my life into the hands of this guy who was probably older than 1952. And just before I signed, I said to him, I've got a few questions that I need to ask you. And he says, yeah, absolutely. And he says, where's the parachute? And he says, only I've got a parachute. So, of course, I opened my eyes. He goes, no, I'm joking. Don't worry. I'm going to put the parachute on you, and I'm going to show you what needs to be done. He says, okay, you got a few questions. I said, yes. How many years experience have you got in flying a Soviet Yak? And he said, no, he's been in the Air Force, and he's actually an old Royal Air Force pilot, and he's got so many hours, and he's flown this and that and the other. So I was quite impressed. So I said, okay, can I trust you, the pilot? And he says, well, it's really up to you, isn't it? And then off we went. We took off, and he knew. You see, what I did is I actually did a wedding to one of his nieces. So he knew that I liked aeroplanes. So he said, would you like to fly this aeroplane? I said, excuse me? The only aeroplane I flew was on a computer game. He goes, well, it's very much the same. It's the same kind of joystick. So if you move it to the left, the aeroplane moves to the left. If you move it to the right, the aeroplane moves it to the right. Whatever you do, don't move it forward, because we're going to then nosedive. If you want to go up a little bit, move it back towards you. And don't worry, I've got the others controlled in my hands. So if you make a mistake, And I said, okay, let me just get myself orientated. And he said, you don't have time for that. You already have the controls. And I was shaking like anything. But it was absolutely amazing. That plane was just flying like putty in my hand. The question we need to ask ourselves is somebody flying this life? Is someone piloting this so-called life? And not only that, but is his character and competence such that I can have confidence to put my life and my future and sign on the dotted line in his hands? And that brings us to the story in the series that we're going to starting from today, called Getting Out of the Boat. It's a well-known story. It's about Peter and the disciples in the boat. Jesus, before this moment, fed about 5,000 people. It was amazing. And maybe the disciples were basking in the glory of this, because at the end of the day, Jesus told them, you need to feed. So in a way, they co-partnered with Jesus in this miracle. Jesus wants to be with his Father on his own, so he orders them to get into the boat and to go across the Sea of Galilee. Peter, of course, being in boats his whole life, but this time there's a storm. It is so strong, literally the text says that the boat is tormented by the waves. When they get into the boat, it's still daytime. You see, the Sea of Galilee is not a very big sea. It's actually not even a sea. It's like a big, big lake. It's about 6 kilometers wide at its widest, and maybe 8 or maybe even 9 kilometers from south to north. And these guys being pros, but after a while in this boat, the lake becomes stormy. And we see this terrified guys in the boat. And as they are terrified, not knowing what to do, even as much as they were pros, they all knew boats. They were all fishermen. They were afraid because as they set their eyes onto the horizon, they saw a figure that looked like a ghost. And they cried out in fear because they didn't recognize that it was Jesus. Now, a quick word about what Jesus is up to there. And Mark, in his gospel of this story, gives us a bit of a clue. Mark says Jesus intended to pass them by. That's kind of a code in the Old Testament when God would make an appearance, where there would be an epiphany. Epiphany is a realization. And he was going to reveal a message to somebody. He had something to say to somebody that didn't even know yet. He had a revelation to give to them. For somebody that would be in a boat. It's a kind of language that the Bible uses, like when God puts Moses tucked away in a cliff of a rock, and he says, all my glory will pass by. Or is the same as he did to Elijah as he stands on the edge of the mountain, for the Lord is about to pass by. And then you'll have some real daunting task for them. When God just passes by, you better listen. So Jesus here is not just doing a magic trick for the heck of it, just for the fun of it. This is a key moment, but they don't realize that they're scared with the storm and the dark. And it's interesting that they got into the boat as Jesus commanded them. And they will have to learn as well that obedience is no guarantee that you will be spared from the adversities of life. And they think it's a ghost, and he says, hey guys, take courage. It's me. You can trust my character and my competence. You can put your life in my hand. You can sign on a dotted line. Now Peter, being Peter, gets an idea. And he says, Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you. Now, why does Matthew include this detail? Why didn't Peter just jump into the water? Well, it's because the story, like the series that we're starting today, is not just about risk-taking. It's not just that God is looking for someone who is going to bungee jump for him or start doing some hand gliding for him. It's a story about obedience, about the heart of a disciple. He wants people who discern his call in their lives. And so Peter says, if you just call me, if you just tell me, Jesus, you see, this is the heart of a disciple. Tell me what to do, God. What a prayer. Tell me what to do, God. Have you ever prayed that prayer recently? You know, it's amazing that as he prays that prayer, immediately Jesus says to him, just come. One word, come. Now, I want you to imagine this scene. I want to invite you to put yourself in this story. How violent is this storm? These guys are seasoned pros on a boat, but they've been struggling to stay afloat. Imagine the size of the waves and strength of the wind, how dark the night is. There are all kind of stories that when it's not dark and when it's right in the middle of the sea, that there is some kind of an abyss or a ghost. And so they believe those stories, and they believe that there's a see Jesus. They don't recognize him for being Jesus. They think it's a ghost. These are conditions under which Peter is going to now get out of the boat. Now, I would think it would be tough enough to try to walk on the water when the water is calm and the sun is bright and the air is still. Imagine doing it when the waves are crashing and the wind is gale force and you're exhausted because you haven't slept and you've just been involved in an amazing miracle a few hours ago. You are terrified. You're not too happy with Jesus because he's made you get into a boat and you didn't want to, and now he's going to tell you to get out in the middle of the sea. And these are the conditions that Peter faces. So what does he choose? What do you choose if you were facing the same thing as Peter would? The boat, which is safe. Yes, it's rocking and the waves are pounding at the boat, but the boat seems to be safe. Are you going to choose the boat or are you going to choose the water? Because at the end of the day, Jesus is in the water. Jesus is the one who calls you. Jesus, if you know his character and you have confidence in him piloting your life, then you would go where Jesus would go, isn't it? You would follow where Jesus is. Again, the boat is safe, the boat is secure, the boat is comfortable, and the night is dark, and the sea is rough, and the wind is strong, there is a storm out there, and if you get out of the boat, whatever your boat will be, it's a really good chance you're going to sink. But if you don't get out of the boat, whatever your boat is, there's a definite certainty that you will never walk on water. Because here it is. If you want to walk on water, you have to get out of the boat. As simple as that. I believe someone inside us tells us that our lives, your life is about more than just sitting in the boat. You are made for something more than merely to avoid failure and risk. Something inside you wants to walk on the water, and we must use that, as I think Matthew does here, as a picture of leaving the comfortable routine that we all just get used to and going on an adventure with God. Let me ask you another question to make this story a little bit more personal and help us to put ourselves in that story. What is your boat? What is your boat? Your boat represents safety and security. It represents safety and security apart from God. Your boat is whatever you put your trust in, especially when things get stormy. Your boat is what keeps you comfortable enough that you don't actually want to get out there again on the waves with Jesus. And if you want to know what your boat is, look at your fear. Your fear will tell you, just ask what would produce fear inside of me if I had to let go and if I had to give it up, to leave it all behind in order to quit playing safe and actually step out in faith. What is your boat? Maybe it's your job. Maybe your job's okay, maybe it's pretty safe, but it's kind of stagnant, and you know it is, and you're kind of haunted by the sense that there is something else out there that God is calling you to do. Maybe it's a ministry. Maybe it's a ministry to get involved in where you know you could serve other people, but it will stretch you, it will challenge you, it will demand certain things from you. Maybe it's a relationship you are in. A relationship right now, and you know it doesn't honor God. You know it's not healthy, it's not making you grow in the right way. But you're afraid to break it. It's too safe. Maybe you need to have that honest conversation with yourself about what is your boat. Maybe it's money. Maybe you're kind of sitting on some money and God could use it to do things and bless people through you, and in that return bless you. But you don't want to let it go. Maybe it's too secure. Maybe you want to avoid pain. Maybe it's pain that is your boat. Pain of loneliness. Did you know that when they did Le Mans classes, now I don't know, do they still do Le Mans classes? It's a long time since I've been pregnant. Do they still do Le Mans classes here? Hey? You know what Le Mans classes are? Okay. It's to teach you how to breathe and teach the woman how to breathe when she is about to have a baby. So I'm not sure if they still do. But back then, through the Mans classes, did you know that they will not allow you to use the word pain? They will not allow you to acknowledge that a woman might experience pain during childbirth. They will just use the word discomfort. They might say to you, you might experience some discomfort. I'm sure if you told a woman who's about to give natural birth, you're going to go through some discomfort, dear, you will get in return a very non-faith-based response. But here's the deal. If your goal in life is to live a comfortable, pain-avoiding life, you got born into the wrong species and into the wrong world. Peter decided to get out of the boat, and the other disciples all watching him. You know, Peter used to shoot off his mouth, or still did throughout. He would just shoot off his mouth at whatever. So just picture this now. Put yourself in the story. He's holding on to the boat. His knuckles are probably turning white from really holding on to the boat. He puts one foot inside the water, the other foot on the other side. He takes it and he puts it in. He takes a deep breath. He lets go while the boat is still wobbling in the storm. He lets go of the boat and he begins to walk. He begins to walk on water towards Jesus, doing what he could never do in his own power. And for a while, it's like there's only Jesus and Peter in the whole world. And Peter is just beaming like a little child, taking his first step to look at me, mommy, look at me, daddy, no hands. And Jesus is thrilled like a master with his disciple. You see, the story is about discipleship. It's about following where Jesus is. And then it happens. When he saw the wind, he was afraid. He takes his eyes off Jesus and he said, what was I thinking? Probably to himself. What in God's name am I doing? Am I crazy? Letting go and really walking on water? I must have been out of my mind. And what happens? As soon as he does, he begins to sink. Now, externally, nothing changes. The night is just as dark. The sea is just as rough. The wind is just as powerful. The only thing that happens, of course, is Peter's focus has shifted from his Savior to the storm. Where are your eyes? Are your eyes on Jesus? Or are your eyes on the storm, on the circumstances? We all know that what it's like to see the waves and the wind. You start a new adventure and you want to do this with God, and you're full of hope, and you've got dreams and aspirations and New Year resolutions that probably have all gone out the window already. And confidence and joy, and you've got a new dream, a new ministry, a new marriage, a new school, a new job opportunity, a new work, new adventure, new giving. And then the reality sets in. There's a problem, an opposite position, the obstacle. And there are dangers and there are risks. And you think to yourself, I didn't see this coming. Because the wind Because of the wind, some people decide, I'm never going to leave the boat. And here's the deal. There is no guarantee that it's going to be safer in the boat. No guarantee. I love this quote from a psychologist. He says this: you can live on bland food so as to avoid ulcers, drink no coffee, tea, or stimulant in the name of health, go to bed early, stay away from nightlife, avoid all conversational subjects so as to never give offense, mind your own business, avoid involvement in other people's problems, spend money only on necessary stuff, and save all you can. You can still break your neck in the bathtub, and it will serve you right. This is from a psychologist. And this brings us to the next part of the story that you would not like, and I don't like it much. But it's a choice to follow Jesus, a choice to experience the constant recurrence of fear. And you see that in the story. The disciples get in the boat, there's a storm, they are afraid. They have to deal with that. Jesus comes to them, they don't recognize. They think it's a ghost, they're afraid. He says, don't be afraid. Peter takes a deep breath. Okay, command me to come to you. Jesus does. Peter sees the wind, starts to sink. He's terrified. Jesus rescues him. Do you think that that's the last time Peter would ever be afraid? No. This is just the beginning. This is a deep truth of walking on water. Every time I want to grow, I have to get into a new territory. And that means I will have to take a new risk, new chances. Every time I do that, I will experience more fear. The fear will never go away. Never, ever will go away. Isn't that great news? I can see you're so excited about it. You're so thrilled about that. The decision to follow Jesus and grow always involves choice risks. And that means a choice to be a follower of Jesus means you must renounce comfort as your ultimate value in life. And that does not bring news to us because we are in comfort zone. We are into comfort. Do you know what the name of the best-selling chair in the world is? Anyone wants to take a guess? Lazy Boy. Come on, I've seen some of you have a lazy boy in your house. You know those ones that you lift it up and the legs go up, and now you even not only just have a lazy boy, but you have a whole couch that everyone else can just press a button and then lazy boy. Not worker boy, not risk boy. Nobody buys a chair called risk boy. I think I'm going to sit for a while on this risk boy. No. Lazy boy. We just want to immerse ourselves in comfort, that we not only have chairs for that, we have a kind of a language around it, that we just go home. And what do we do on a lazy boy? Come on, guys, what do? We lift up the remote control and we veg. We make ourselves like a vegetable as humanly possible, because vegetation is not taking a risk. Preferably, I'll do that in front of a TV, and we even have a language for all of that. What is a person who sits in front of a TV on his lazy boy called? A couch potato. So here's a couch potato in the lazy boy, and you might think of the 11 disciples in the boat as boat potatoes. They were following Jesus, but they didn't want to take the risk. They would rather be couch potatoes in a boat. A lot of people in churches are what you might call pew potatoes. But not you guys. No, not you guys. Not here, not in this church. Anyway, we're all into the comfort zone, aren't we? A whole lot of, and Jesus is still looking for people that will get out of the boat. Peter does, and he starts walking, but then he sees the wind, and he gets afraid, and he starts to sink. Now, let me ask you another question. Did Peter fail? Did Peter fail at that moment? And before I get to that, I want to make an observation, because failure is such a powerful dynamic in our days. Failure is a part of life. Failure is not an event. Failure is a judgment about an event. It's a way we think about an outcome. Winston Churchill once was asked, what most helped you prepare you to lead England for a while on your own against Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Germany? And Churchill said, it was a time when I had to repeat a grade in elementary school. And he said, you mean you flunked school? Churchill said, I never flunked anything in my life. I was given a second opportunity to get it. Tammy often tells our kids that fail means first attempt in learning. So did Peter fail? Did Peter fail when he got out of the boat and he began to doubt and he started to sink? I mean, his faith wasn't strong enough. He didn't keep his eyes on Jesus. He sank. He failed. But here's what I think. I think there were 11 bigger failures in the boat that day. There were 11 bigger failures sitting back in the boat. And that's what I think. They failed quietly. They failed privately. They failed, went unnoticed, unobserved. Nobody criticizes them. Nobody criticizes the 11 in the boat. Peter gets a lot of criticism over the centuries on this very passage, and many sermons were preached about his failure. This only Peter knew the shame and the public failure. And I know the hurt that comes with that. But only Peter knew two other things. Only Peter knew the glory of walking on water. He alone knew what it was to be held up by God, to do something he could never do on his own. And I bet he carried that with him to the grave. I think you've never experienced what you experienced with God and you forget about it. Only Peter knew that when he sank, Jesus would wholly be devoted to him. Only Peter knew that Jesus immediately reached out. And he had that moment with Jesus. None of the other 11s had that moment. They could, but you see, they never got out of the boat. I'm going to ask the worship team to come up and just play something in the background. And I want you to listen to the questions. And these are reflective questions. These are prayerful questions. And I want you to close your eyes and I want you to listen to the questions. And don't let me ask you the question, but allow God to ask you that question today. So God's question today is, how about you? When is the last time you got out of your boat? And maybe today is an invitation to just let God. Let go of the boat and let God talk to you. Just have a heart-to-heart right now. Just like Peter had that moment. God command you to get out of the boat. When the last time you did that? Maybe there was a time in your life when you were kind of like Peter. Command me and you got out of the boat on a regular basis, but somewhere along the line, something happened and you don't let go of the boat anymore. Maybe you became too comfortable. Maybe your walk with Jesus has become too comfortable. Maybe you have to have a real nice boat Maybe you've got deck chairs and paddling and stabilizers and it's really nice boat and it's comfortable. And you don't care to get out of the boat because you're comfortable. Well, God has something for you, and He can't give that to you until you get out of that boat, until you leave that comfort behind and take the risk and follow Jesus. What about this church? I think about this church. What do you think God will do at the hill if we all chose to get out of the boat? I mean, imagine all of us here and those who are listening. Here at the hill, just let go and say, you know what? Yes, it's central out there. It's the world out there. But what about if we just let go? If you all choose to get out of the boat, it takes faith. And faith is being able to see the unseen. Peter, physical obedience of getting out of the boat, and we'll talk about it in our series, but Peter's physical obedience of getting out of the boat was the key to him getting the keys in understanding the spiritual things. It's because Peter chose to get out of the boat that eventually Jesus says to him, I will give you the keys. And because of those keys, the church will never experience the gates of hell. But Peter had to be obedient physically in order to be able to understand the spiritual things. What if God wants to show you the spiritual things? And you know what? Jesus is still looking for someone who will get out of the boat. And I don't know what this means for you. I don't know what your boat is. I know that if you get out of your boat, you're going to have problems because there is a storm out there. And you will take risk and you will face dangers and your faith will not be perfect. But I'm telling you, if you get out of the boat, I believe two things are going to happen. One of them is that when you fail, and you will fail, Jesus will be there to pick you up. He remains faithful. He remains adequate. He's got the credentials to your life. And the right arm has not lost the power to pick you up. And the second thing that you're going to find out when you get out of the boat, the second thing I know is every once in a while, you will walk on water. But you need to get out of the boat. Because here's the deal. If you want to walk on water, you have to get out of the boat. It's as simple as that. Amen.